into the night. Or
how do you stop
what
work?
I
Can you
realize
do that?
is,
Well, for me,
you
once
just
I
switch
leave
off?
set, then
Yeah.
I'm just like, okay, I'm done for the day. But I think it's different if I have like, sometimes you have work calls or you got to do like a brief or something like that. I think it's hard because that's the thing I find harder to balance when you're doing work that's like, if I'm on set or with a client, it's different because you're just like, I'm here at work, the baby's with somebody else. But it's the emails or other things where I'm never sure when to like switch off.
When I was in my early 20s, I was working in corporate finance in a bank, and it was where they had all the managers, the corporate managers with their assistant. They had about 100 clients each, and one of my jobs was we were monitoring the performance and output of their work. So you were in an office with people who all had the same job, had the same amount of clients. Some of them would work till 10, 11 at night, and then you'd look at their output. But the guy, Dennis, who went golfing at 5:30 every day and just crammed in a really efficient, effective day, his output and his success was far greater than the guys who were just snowed under plugging away till 10, 11 at night. So I kind of witnessed that and realized it's a bit of a falsity. So actually, the more tired you get and the more you keep going, it's that stepping away that refreshes you. And so I would have the tendency to get a bit workaholic-y and sort of go overboard, but I get very strict about cutting it off. And so I do try to do that. I mean, my husband and I work together, so obviously we end up at the dinner table talking about work a lot. But when it's 5:30, I'm like out of there. And I like that for all the people we work with as well. I want work-life balance. I just think it brings more energy into the work people are doing.
Yeah, I think it's hard when it's your passion. So like for me, it has become, I wouldn't say it has always been my passion, but in the last 6-7 years, it has very much become my passion because I've just met the most incredible people and they've all become really good friends in life. And so you do end up talking shop because that's the thing you have in common. But I think as well for the beauty industry, you can't escape it. And I keep knocking this, sorry. You can't escape it. I'm so bad for it. I can imagine it's like, stop knocking the microphone.
Because we talk with our hands.
I know. I've had to like, I know it's going to be a weird video of me gesturing over here. There's so much passion and I find it hard to escape because I just get ideas. It's like, you know how I was saying I did, when I first met you guys, I'd just done Reiki. And it was like it unlocked something for me. So we're going very woo-woo here and not everyone's going to get it. And I am that person that I need science. So when I went to have Reiki, I said to her, I want to believe, but I'm not a converted yet. I have one foot in each camp. I want to believe there's more. And that's why I loved the archetypes and the cards. I want to believe there's more, but I need the physical proof, tangible proof. And I think it unlocked something in me where this creative energy just flowed through me now and I can't turn it off. And I think with beauty, it is everywhere and it is what you perceive. So whether it's sometimes, obviously being part of the DEI committee, I remember standing and looking at a load of leaves, autumnal leaves on the floor, and there were so many different shades. And I picked them all up and I had them in my hand and I went, what are these? And my son went, it's just a leaf. I said, but which leaf? He said, but they're all leaves. And it just gave me the most incredible feeling of how inclusivity works. Whereas, you know, for a child, they just see a leaf. Whereas for me, I saw a spectrum of colour and shapes and sizes and diversity. And I think for me, that's where the beauty industry is really powerful, is there's so many opportunities to celebrate our eccentricities and our individuality.
Yes, and you working on the DEI for the British Beauty Council. Diversity,
equity
and inclusion.
Yeah.
I've got it now.
It used to be equality, then it became equity. It changes a lot, but yeah, DEI. It's something I fell into. It's not. So when I was at Pull, we became part of the British Beauty Council, and I actually started being part of the team within accessible and inclusive packaging. Only like 10% of blind people can read Braille. It's terrifyingly low. And so I met with the most amazing brands where they would have QR codes and they would have audio files and other ways, because there's so many people in the world that deserve to experience all these amazing, beautiful products, but we just don't think about it. And So DEI very quickly became a passion of mine that I didn't even know about. But like I go back to when I was a kid, I never liked bullies. My whole life, I would get myself into so much trouble. I can tell you so many stories of me on public transport where there's being someone inappropriate and I'm always that person in the middle of it going, break it up. Maybe it's because my parents were police officers. I don't know.
Both of them?
Both of them. They met in the Met. I said to my mum,
Wow.
yeah, my parents were both police officers. That's how they met. And I wanted to be a police officer. And my mum said, not on your Nelly, not a chance. And so I've always just wanted to stand up for people and use my voice to help people that struggle to find theirs. And that's why I got into teaching as well. And that's why I love helping neurodivergent children in particular find their voice and speak up. Not always about wrong, but just embrace their own voices. And I just realised that DEI is so much like that. And it's a scary topic, and it's a topic that a lot of people avoid. It's like politics. It's very much about the lens at which you look through. Because we can all, like when we were talking about with the kids, you raise your child going, well, my parents did this and, you know, I didn't like how they did that, so I'm going to do the opposite. It's very similar with the diversity aspect. So you will always fight for what you have seen or what you represent and the journey you've gone through. And I found that really interesting because obviously, you know, I'm a middle-class white woman. So I haven't really experienced any form of discrimination like a lot of other communities.
Would you say you have, as if you take feminism and add that to it, as a woman, have you felt it?
Yes, do you know what, this is a really interesting topic. So we'll talk about this, the feminism piece. So I think my gran was a feminist. My mum was ahead of her time. She was very spiritual, which for her generation, you know, she's in her 60s now.
And a policewoman.
And a policewoman.
Spiritual policewoman.
Yeah, she was.
This is a good mix.
It's really fun. It was when she had to tell me that she'd be like, I was chasing this guy down the street and then I got my spray out of my handbag and I'm like, pardon? You know, she was the police officer with a handbag. But yeah, feminism for me is a really big part of it. But like with DEI, feminism can go the wrong way too. Mm-hmm. I've been in many, many rooms where I would class myself as a feminist. And what I mean by that is I absolutely believe that women are just as capable and in certain aspects actually more capable. And it frustrates me that when, you know, I used to be in the tech industry and I was the minority in that room and I got told to shush on many occasions, and it did not go down very well. And I had to learn to say, excuse me, I haven't finished yet. And I was very proud when I learned that one day how to do it. I shook and I went out and cried in the toilets, but I did it. So I have experienced it in that aspect. But in the grand scheme of things, it's not been about how I look. It's been about my voice in a corporate room.
What were your parents' expectations of you as a young woman? Yeah. Were they encouraging of a career? Was your mom?
Yeah. So it was my gran. My gran was a crazy Scottish woman. She actually, my gran's amazing. So the retirement complexes and the kind of homes that we know to this day, the independent living, my gran was actually the woman that piloted it and brought it to the UK and said she used to work in retirement communities. She said there's a better way to do this. So my gran was the breadwinner. My granddad was the person that stayed at home and raised my mum, which obviously back in those days is unheard of. So I was raised in a very strong female environment. And then my mum happened to pop out 5 girls, which just meant that was going to carry on. So actually as siblings, we're all very strong and passionate and successful in our own ways. But what we were really raised to be is empathetic. Actually, that's what my mum thought our superpowers were, is to be empathetic. And so for me, when I go into a room, it's never about my intellect. It's about my emotional intelligence rather than anything else, which in a male environment, particularly the tech world and finance world, as I'm sure you know, it's about what you know. And there's this elitism that comes into it. And I think that's why I love the beauty industry so much, because it's all about a feeling. And you can't argue with a feeling because it's very personal. And that's why DEI, I think, is a really important topic, because it's just about diversity of thought. That's literally it. Diversity of thought and making sure that everyone has the same experience. And if we just focus on that, it will all slowly work its way out.
And you lucky because your husband, obviously, you sort of said about your family, maybe the expectations were a bit different. Makeup seemed a bit like, why are you going to New York to do makeup? But it sounds like you've married someone that does support you.
He's really supportive. I think that's like the reason that, like, one of the big reasons why I was like drawn to him. But yeah, in my family, it was like you either become like a teacher, like acceptable, like women's jobs. It was like a teacher, nurse, like things that felt
Caregiver roles.
Yeah, for women. Like, so it was frowned upon to work, but if you're going to work, it would be one of those roles. And I was like, maybe I don't want to do that though. Maybe I want to do my own thing. And yeah, so when I met my husband, I was like, oh, because I was trying to date. I was raised Mormon, and when I moved to New York, I was trying to date Mormons, because the whole thing is that if you leave the church, you drag everyone from your family out of the highest level of heaven. So if you marry outside the church, you pull everyone down like to the lower rungs, because you want to be in the high one. Anyway, so I was like, I can't be the one to pull my family out of heaven. Like,
that's a lot of pressure to put on someone.
And I wasn't even sure I believed it, but I'm like, my family believes it. And so like, if I leave, like, they'll kind of see me as like being the one that dragged them from heaven. So I was dating all these Mormons, and they were like, oh, it's great that you do makeup because that's like a part-time job.
I would really struggle in those conversations.
Or like the classic one I got was like, oh, like you like what makeup counter do you work at? Or like, oh, do you sell like Avon, like kind of things? And I'm like, oh no, like this is like my like, it's like a, like, you know, I do it for like on set and in fashion. And they're like, oh, so it's like a part-time, like that's great for when we have kids. And I was thinking like,
no way.
No, like I want to like have a career, and like just as much as you have a career. And so then finally I was like, I can't date these Mormon guys anymore. I've got to date somebody who's not Mormon. And met my husband, who was at Columbia at the time. And he was like going to business school, and he like has a business background. And he was like, yeah, like, why wouldn't you work? Like, of course you'll keep working. And I was like, oh, okay, like, great. Yeah, so I was sold easily on him when he was like, yeah, of course you can keep working. And I was like, oh, easy, like, cool. I'm like, great, good to go.
So you had a huge baggage and framework to get rid of.
Yeah.
To sort of break away and where you are today. So it's really impressive.
How did your family respond to that? Because obviously there's, you know, religious beliefs are really important to that family and how you've been raised, and everyone's really different. So that must have been really hard one for you to have that conversation. But how did your family react to that?
They weren't thrilled. Yeah, they weren't thrilled. They're like, I think their kind of insights have changed and their beliefs have changed the past couple of years, maybe a bit because of my nagging at them, but I think their viewpoints have started to change. And so now they're like more accepting. I think in the beginning they were really nervous about me marrying somebody who was not a member of the church. I think they were worried about other things. I think they were sad that I left, that I was no longer religious. They're now like, oh, you're doing fine and you're not gonna
burst into flames.
Yeah.
What was the driving factor for you wanting to leave?
I think I didn't feel valued as like a woman. I think especially in Mormonism, there's a lot more women than there are men. So if you don't go on your like your Mormon mission, you're kind of like you're kind of like the outcast. So a lot of men didn't want to go on their missions, and then they were seen as outcasts. So then in New York, there's 3 women to every 1 Mormon man, which means that these guys that are pretty mediocre have like their pick of the women.
They're doing really well. They're best of a bad bunch is what I'm hearing.
Yes. So I remember like being in New York and people telling me like, you're cute though, like you'll be okay, like just hang on, like there'll be a Mormon man for you at some point.
Oh.
And I'm thinking like,
he might be 12 now, but he'll be here eventually. Yeah.
And I'm thinking like, I'm dating these like short, like really rude men who would think they're like God's gift to the earth. And I'm going on these dates. You're also taught it's rude to say no. When someone asks you on a date, you're taught to always say yes to the first date if it's a Mormon boy asking you. So I'd go on all these dates, even if I didn't want to go. They would kind of speak down to you. They'd tell you about how they want you to have 7 kids. And you're thinking, 7 kids in New York? Like, where are you going to put them all? Like, what job do you have, sir? That we're going to have 7 children in New York City. And then they say, but you're going to be a stay-at-home mom, and you need to be religious, and you need to have a master's degree so you can raise our kids at home. And I just, at a certain point, was like, this is unbelievable. And I can't go on one more date with like a guy shorter than me that's like balding and telling me that like
It's just because you like model tall you are.
yeah,
So you
I'm
were
very
looking
tall.
down.
So many short Mormon
But
boys.
then look at this, what you've achieved, because yeah, coming from that framework and like breaking out. So I think like we probably could all talk about the times we've been told something really negative, and it's been the most important, powerful thing in our lives because it spurred us to break the shackles and
Yeah.
drive through. I mean, I can still hold on to comments that were said in the past that it's fuel for me. I'm still riding the wave off it.
Do you know this is such a terrible thing to say, but I had this one ex-boyfriend who told me like, you'll never make it. And I was like, oh, you just watch me. I'm going to send you
There it
like,
is.
you know, I'm like, you just wait, buddy. He died though. So I'm like, I'll never get to prove him wrong.
Oh no, that's so many things I need to process in that one sentence. You've just said something that I think has motivated and been my internal mantra, pretty much from as young as I can remember, and it's watch me.
Yeah.
That's it. It's anything. It's watch me, even from a tiny kid. And I have to credit my mum and kind of my family for that. And I think also my sisters are an incredible support. But I think that self-belief is really important in business, in
When
particular.
you're victimized, if someone has said something very negative, I just think you can turn it into a superpower. Years ago, I listened to the founder of Green and Black tell his story. And even on stage, he was like, and that teacher at school said to me, you'll never make anything of your life. And she remembered it from when she was about 10, and she still, it had spurred her right through. And I thought, yes, actually, we need to take these negative things because they end up being our superpower of rocket fuel.
They do.
I had a
fuel you.
very short, not nice male teacher in business studies pull me out of and put me in for foundation at the time, which meant I couldn't get above a C at the time for GCSEs. And I was like, there's no grounds or justification for this. He just didn't like me. And I walked up to him and said, if you do not put me in for the higher exam, I'm not taking it. And he said, well, you're going to fail. And he said, you will walk away with no GCSE. And I was like, that's my decision. And I turned around and got an A. And I literally could have shoved that paper up his nose so far. And it was watch me. And because I had more faith in myself than someone else. And I think there's so many times, and it's not just women, this is men as well. And anyone experiences this. I think it's really important to find that fire, isn't it? And just fight for what you believe in. And I think that's really important to instill actually in, and I make sure I instill that in a lot of my teams as well that I work with when I'm working on kind of coaching, is forget about what everyone else says. No one is going to back you more than you. No one. And you need, and I try and teach my son that as well. As much as it's like, I'll always be in your corner, but there's going to be a day where I'm not in the room.
So it's interesting how we have fought our way through, and now we have boys, and we are mothers of boys who will be men.
Yeah.
It's really scary to be a boy mom. Like,
I feel like it's a really big responsibility.
yeah.
Yeah.
Because I've seen how some other women haven't done it very well.
I know.
Just from a housekeeping point
I
of view,
think
to be honest.
You try to, I mean, I can't say I've excelled at it, but you try to go, if they grow up as men, how will they treat their partners, and would you want to be their partner? And I often say to my boys, I'm sorry, are you going to behave like that in a relationship? It's like the first go-to, are you going to be like that to your woman? I'm like on their side, on the woman's side.
Yeah.
Listen, as parents, we will probably make mistakes. In fact, we will make mistakes, but if you could just be as conscious as you can be as you navigate it,
I kind of feel bad for men. I'm not going to lie. Like, I think it's really hard being a guy in this day and age because we want it all. We want to be treated like a princess, have the doors opened for us. I can see men in the background going, preach. Like, we want to be, Sam's over there, like, trying to keep very quiet. You know, we want it all. We want to be independent. We want to have our careers. We want to have our kids. But at the same time, we want to be treated really well. We want the doors opened for us. And yes, we'd love it if you carry our bags. And that's the complete opposite to what we're saying in other ways. So I do think it's also very hard being a man with Western women in particular. You know, I've worked with lots of different communities and cultures, and I remember one guy once, he was from the Asian community. He said, Western women give me a headache in business. And as a Western woman, I was highly offended by that. And he kind of said, you've just proven my point. Like, you kind of want to have your cake and eat it. And if I put my pragmatic hat on, I can understand why he sees that.
Well, it's true.
It is. It is true. And I think that's where I do think there's a lot of pressure raising kids in general, but I think raising boys. For me, I know, like, feminism, and it's something that is a very interesting topic, but I would want to raise, and I will be raising my son to be, gender is irrelevant, race is irrelevant. You know, it's got nothing to do with that. If you're a human being, you're a living creature, you have feelings, you have a brain, you can kind of be conversed into whatever situation you need to.
Absolutely.
And so for me, it's about raising him not to go out of his way to be a feminist, but actually to not, it's like what Sam said, you know, as soon as you identify it and as soon as you talk about it, it exists sometimes. And there's a balance with that. And it, you know, I think that's a big part of it for me. So it's about raising my son to kind of be a feminist, but actually respect women and not belittle them, which is very, very hard because there's only so much of it you can control. Like, he's just started junior school, so he's just gone into year 3, and the difference in him since September is massive because he's gone from being in like that baby environment to now there's a lot of things that come out of his mouth and I'm like, I didn't teach you that, so where did that come from? And it's like, oh, I heard other boys talking about it at school. So for me, it's actually about raising them to not necessarily listen always to other influences. And I know that when I've done a lot of research into this, the social side for boys is a lot harder than girls. Girls actually listen to their own views a lot more when you look at the neuroscience of it all and from a social point of view, whereas boys are a little bit more influenced by the outsiding factors. I mean, have you found that? Because obviously you've got older boys now.
Well, I wouldn't call myself a feminist, and so it's like a big grey area for me because I don't want us to write motherhood out of the story. I don't want us to go so far away that we end up, it's like you end up eating yourself because you've banged the drum too hard down one road. So again, I just want to bring it back to the balance space, but I think kids pick up an energy. They pick up an energy in the home. They pick up a dynamic. Sometimes it's out of our control. You talk about outside influences. There's a million influences. But I think it's just going back to that each child is an individual and their own person. They're not a mini-me, even though it can seem like that, and you have to treat them like that. And it's different. We want to kind of sort of mold them and make them a particular way, but they really are on their own journey. And the dynamic is different, like it is with siblings. You know, you guys are the oldest, I'm the baby of the family, very different dynamic. And I watch with my children, the dynamic between all of them is, completely different.